Hey, what's up? In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to pay off your debts and make sure you stay out of them for good. I'm going to be sharing with you the tricks that I've used to pay over $50,000 of credit debts in less than 2 years and ultimately made sure that I never get back into debts again. My name is Claude and you're watching theambitiongame.com, where I teach you the art of getting your shit together with your life and your money. And if you want to keep up with what I do, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you're notified whenever I make a new video. So the first thing that you need, it's very obvious. You need a source of income. Now, it doesn't matter what it comes from. You can either have a job, you can have a business, or it could be money coming in from somewhere. As long as you have money coming in, it's already a good start. Now, if you don't have money coming in, then you need to make that a priority, because if you can't pay off your debts, then what's going to happen is the interests are going to keep piling up and your debt's getting bigger and bigger, and eventually you have your creditors running after you and then you start losing everything. I mean, it's a bit extreme, but you get the point. You don't want that. Now, if you do have a job, amazing, but let's say you have a job and you're still struggling with your money, then keep watching because I've got some tricks to help you out. Now, the second thing that you need is something that I'm pretty sure you're not using, because if you were, you wouldn't be in debt. And that, my friend, is your budget. See, when you don't use a budget, what's happening is your money's going all over the place. And what happens every month, you end up overspending and you're like, I don't know where my money went. See, when you use a budget, it helps you become aware, first of all, of your financial situation and also where your money's going and your spending habit. So the point of using your budget is to figure out where your money's going so you can identify where you shouldn't be spending your money so that you can rectify the situation, adjust your lifestyle, and make sure that you don't overspend every month. It's a bit of work, but it's definitely worth it. There's so many different ways of creating your budget. You can use paper, you can use Excel spreadsheets, or you can use apps. And this is actually what I would recommend you to do, because using apps is so much easier and faster to maintain as opposed to doing everything manually. Now, when it comes to apps, there's apps for every different kind of system, whether you're a phone user or a computer user. You've got YNAB, which stands for You Need a Budget. You've got Wally, Dan Ramsey's Every Dollar, Empower, and many, many more. Personally, I'm a big fan of Mint.com because I can put all my accounts under one system, and this allows me to monitor in real time where the money is going and what money is coming in so that I can make sure to stay within my budget every single month. Now, before I move on to the next step, the last thing you need to know with your budget is that it's going to take you a while to get the true picture of what's actually going on with your financial situation. Reason being, initially when you first start budgeting, you can easily track your monthly income and also your monthly bills, but it's a lot harder to track for anything that's unexpected and unplanned, and that's going to be for you to actually see whether you have to plan for these unexpected expenses in your budget from then on, or if they're completely unnecessary. All right, let's move on to number 3, and that is the fun part. You're going to be reducing your monthly expenses to a bare minimum. Now, let me warn you, it's not going to be pleasant, it's not going to be comfortable, because you're going to have to do some sacrifices. And by that I mean you have to do everything you can to change your lifestyle so that you can get back on track financially. It's going to take a while, it might take months or it might take years depending on how bad it is, but if you're not willing to do any sacrifices, let me tell you, you're not going to be able to pay off your debts, or it's going to take you much, much longer. When I first started getting serious about paying off my debts, I've identified 4 essential things that were necessary for my everyday life. And that is having a roof over my head, having some food so I can stay alive and healthy, having a way to go to school and work, and also the internet connection, either through a PC or a mobile phone. Now, we could argue that having a mobile phone and the internet is not really essential or necessary, but because we're so connected nowadays in our lives, I mean, we could do without them, but it would be highly inconvenient. Now, when it comes to non-essentials, you don't need to eliminate them altogether, but cutting down on them drastically would be a really good idea. Things such as going to restaurants all the time, especially if you eat out at lunch for work every day, going to party on weekends because the booze gets really expensive, or going to Starbucks like 2-3 times a day. Like, these little coffees, they don't really look like much, but when you look over the course of the month, they end up being very expensive. Now let's talk about something that you really do need to eliminate really quickly, and by that I mean you need to stop chasing the shiny new objects all the time. I know a lot of us suffer from shiny new object syndrome, and that's something that is most likely the reason why you're in debt in the first place. I understand that getting the new $1,000 iPhone is really cool, but you don't need one, especially if you can use your phone already to text and send phone calls and whatnot and browse the internet. You don't need a new phone, okay? It's just a waste of money. Same thing with gadgets, new computers, electronics, and all these things. These are money sinks, and you want to avoid them at all costs, because a lot of times you're confusing your wants with your needs. You want something so badly that you're like, I need this stuff. It's essential to my life. But in this case, and actually most of the time, it's not. Now this part's not really fun, but you might also want to be cutting down on your hobbies. And by that I mean especially expensive hobbies. Because if you're someone who is into high-end gaming, these computers are very expensive. If you're collecting electric guitars, amplifiers, or maybe watches or cars and stuff like that, then these things are really, really expensive. And at the moment, unfortunately, you can't really afford to put money into that. Now, I don't necessarily tell you to eliminate these, but you need to cut down on them to a bare minimum, so that you can still enjoy them, but without them costing you insane amount of money that's putting you in trouble. Now, I know that cutting down on your hobbies kind of sucks, but it's a really good opportunity for you to be able to find different hobbies that either don't cost much or nothing at all. Now, to give you an example, Netflix, for instance, it's about, what, $10 a month? And you've got hours and hours, even like months and years of entertainment just from that one service alone. Now, if you're not into movies and TV shows, then obviously there's a lot of other things that you can do. You just need to look out for them. All right, now I want you to tell me down in the comments below, what will you be cutting down on to save some money, and what is a non-negotiable for you? You remember the 4 essentials that I told you earlier? Well, we're gonna be cutting down on that as well. If you want to save $50 to $100 per month easily, what you need to do is take a look at your internet connection and your mobile phone plans. Chances are that you're overpaying so much right now for something that you might be using to its full extent, but you probably don't need in the first place. So what I suggest you to do is take the most basic plans that you can find within reason, and you're still gonna have an internet connection that's gonna work and a phone that works, but you're already saving money. Another way to save a few $100s a month off of your expenses is to take a look at what you're using in terms of transportation. How many cars do you have? If you have multiple cars, you really need them. And for the car that you have, do you also need that car? Maybe you can take public transportation, or you can bike to school or work, or you can even walk there if you're close enough. But I do understand that in some areas where you live, you might absolutely need a car. So just take a look at that car and see how much it costs you. Maybe you can get something cheaper that will help you save a few hundreds per month. Another way to save money really quickly is to take a look at the kind of food that you buy on a regular basis. You see, for me back in the day, what I would do is I would spend hundreds of dollars per month on crap. Such things as pies, cookies, ice cream, cakes, anything that's not good for you, you name it, my pantries and fridge were filled with them. And when I decided to cut down on those, not only did I save that amount of money, but it also helped me become a lot healthier in the process. Now the last one, I promise you, it's gonna hurt a little. And if you're really serious about paying off your debts, this is something that you might actually want to consider. And that is where you live. Now, if you're alone or you're in a couple, this can actually be doable. But if you have a family, I do understand that this might be a little bit more difficult. But when you take a look at this, look at your apartment or look at your house. Can you get rid of that apartment and go somewhere cheaper? And that is probably the easiest thing to do. Now, if you have a mortgage, there are several options you can do. One of which is just sell the place, okay? I know this is very difficult to do emotionally because you're probably attached to that place. You chose that place for a specific reason that resonated with you. But sell the place, rent something cheap, and then look into buying something else when you're back on track. Otherwise, if you don't want to sell the house, there's something smart you can do. You can still move out of the house and rent something cheap, but you can rent that place to somebody else and collect passive income in the meantime. Obviously, moving can be quite expensive, depending on where you move and the type of company, the types of services you're paying for. But if you're strapped for cash and you really can't afford to move, then I'm going to be showing you what to do a little later on. And now we're moving on to step number 4, and that is you paying off your debts. So as you keep looking for ways to minimize your monthly expenses, you're going to take all that money that you're saving and focus that on paying a particular debt. That in itself is very simple, but there's many different ways to do it. So the very first thing that I need you to do is to make a list of all your debts, from the highest amount of debts to the smallest, and also put the interest rates next to each other. Not only is this going to help you figure out how much money you owe in total, but this is also going to help you decide which method you're going to take to approach paying off your debts. There are many different ways to pay off your debts, but right now I'm going to be showing you 2 methods that you can use to pay off your debts depending on your financial situation or your personality. So method number 1 is going to be paying off your highest interest rates debt first. This is something that is actually recommended by several financial advisors because the logic behind it is that the faster you pay off those debts and the less interest rates you're going to be paying, which in the long run is going to save you money. The downside to this method is that as you keep paying off that debt month after month after month, the thing is that you might not necessarily see an immediate change in your financial situation until that debt is entirely paid off. So that might get a little bit discouraging or outright discouraging, and this might make you want to give up. Now, that's the interesting part about the second method, and that is you're going to be taking the smallest debt that you have, regardless of the interest rate, and then you're going to be paying that off. The reason why you want to do that is because we're mostly emotional people, and the fact that you can pay off a debt and see it cleared out faster is going to keep you motivated to pay off the rest afterwards. There is actually a third method that is actually what I use, but I've got to warn you, this is somewhat dangerous, and that is trying to find a way to consolidate all your highest interest debts or your biggest debts into one single loan. The reason why I did that is very simple. I just wanted to make sure that all those smaller minimum payments that added up to a lot would be reduced to a maximum. And by doing that, I ended up being able to save easily $400 a month extra just by consolidating everything. Now, the problem with that method is that now that you have a loan on the side, all your other debts which were paid off, and especially your credit cards, should technically be empty. Now, you really need to make sure not to fill those up again because you're going to end up in the same situation that you were and probably even worse off than before. The important part is for you to be able to pay off your debts in a way that you're comfortable. So choose a strategy, make a plan, and act on it. Obviously, you're going to find some bumps down the road, but as long as you stick to your plan, you should be fine. Now let's move on to step number 5, and that is we're going to kickstart your debt payment. The way you're going to do this is very simple. You're going to look around your house, okay? You're going to see all the stuff that's lying around that has value and also the things that you don't need. And I understand that this might be emotionally difficult to do that, but you're going to sell all that stuff up. When I went through this exercise myself, I've got to tell you it was really difficult because not only did I have so much stuff lying around that was actually pretty valuable, but most of the stuff was actually related to my hobbies, and it was kind of hard to let it go. But I sold stuff like, let me see, 14 electric guitars, easily, all the stuff related to hip with amplifiers, effects, and whatnot. I sold furniture, high-end electronics. I sold my 52-inch HD TV at the time, expensive headphones, and whatnot. I sold almost everything. As hard as this was, actually the fun part is I managed to make at least $16,000 in less than 2 months to be able to kickstart paying off my debts. This is most definitely the easiest and fastest way for you to start collecting money so that you can start paying off your debt faster. Look into it. The last thing I want to talk about is something that initially I wanted to put first, but I decided to make it last because this is something that is of the utmost importance and something that you'll want to do for the rest of your life, and that is increasing your income. There's many different ways to do that, but given that you have a job right now, you can probably ask if you can work some overtime, and if you can't do that, and if you're actually skilled at what you do and you deserve a raise, ask your boss for a raise. Definitely, that should help you out. Now, if these 2 options don't work, maybe look for a new job in what you can do that may pay you a little bit better. And if you can't do that, then maybe think about getting a second job temporarily. And if you don't want to do that, but maybe you have some sort of skills outside of work that could be useful, why not start a side business? Of all these options I've mentioned, I'm actually curious, would you consider starting your own business? And if you did and haven't started yet, what is stopping you from starting right now? Please write it down in the comments below. Well, that's it. That sums up my strategy for getting out and staying out of debt. Now, with a job, a budget, the desire to reduce your monthly expenses to a minimum, a debt strategy that actually works for you, and an initial effort to get as much money as you can from what you can already leverage inside your house, you're well on your way to make your debt a thing of the past. You can do this, my friend. You are a rock star.